What if the Alaska quarter sitting quietly in your change jar is hiding a story that reaches all the way from America's 49th state to a documented four-figure auction result? Welcome back to ARY Coins News, where today we are taking an extremely close look at the 2008 Alaska State Quarter, the coin carrying the powerful words, "The Great Land." At first glance, this may look like an ordinary circulation quarter, and in most cases it is. But when condition becomes exceptional, when a genuine mint-made error appears, or when a specimen reaches the highest certified grades, the market can change dramatically. The coin in your images shows the classic Alaska design with the grizzly bear, salmon, North Star, the Great Land, Alaska, 1959, and EPLUOBUSUNUM. But there is one major fact we need to establish immediately. Despite some online descriptions, this ordinary 2008 D quarter is not a silver quarter. It is a copper-nickel-clad circulation coin. That distinction is extremely important when discussing its real market history. The story of this quarter begins with Alaska itself. The United States Mint introduced the Alaska State Quarter as the 49th design in the 50-state quarters program. Alaska entered the Union on January 3, 1959, becoming the 49th state, and that historical date appears directly on the reverse of the coin. The design shows a grizzly bear emerging from water while holding a salmon in its jaws, with the North Star above the inscription, "The Great Land." The design was created by Artistic Infusion Program master designer Susan Gamble and sculpted by United States Mint sculptor-engraver Charles Vickers. This was not simply a random wildlife image. It was deliberately chosen to communicate Alaska's enormous natural landscape and identity. The Mint released the Alaska Quarter into circulation in 2008, making it one of the final state quarters before the original 50-state program came to an end. Now look carefully at the coin shown in your video. The obverse features the familiar portrait of George Washington, with United States of America surrounding the upper portion of the design, Liberty near the left side, In God We Trust near the right, and $quarter below. The tiny D mint mark identifies the Denver Mint. On the reverse, the bear and salmon dominate the design, while Alaska and 1959 appear above, and the words "The Great Land" sit beside the animal. EPLUOBUSUNUM appears along the bottom. Every one of these details can help confirm that you are looking at the 2008 Alaska State Quarter. And if your coin is circulated, those details may show varying degrees of wear, depending on how long it remained in everyday commerce. There is something fascinating about the 1959 date, because it can easily confuse someone seeing the coin for the first time. This is not a 1959 quarter. The actual coin date is 2008. The 1959 inscription commemorates the year Alaska became a state. The United States Mint specifically states that Alaska was admitted to the Union on January 3, 1959, and the quarter's reverse carries that year as part of its historical design. So if you find a 2008 Alaska quarter with 1959 on the reverse, that is exactly what the normal design should show. It is not a mysterious date alteration, and it does not mean that you have discovered a 1959 silver quarter. Understanding this distinction can prevent one of the most common identification mistakes surrounding this coin. Now comes the most important question: how many 2008 Alaska quarters were actually produced? PCGS lists a reported mintage of approximately 254 million for the regular strike Denver issue. That is a very large number, and it immediately tells us that an ordinary circulated example is not an extreme rarity simply because it carries a D mint mark. The coin is also listed as a regular copper-nickel-clad quarter weighing approximately 5.67 grams, measuring about 24.3 millimeters across, and carrying a reeded edge. In other words, if you have a normal worn 2008 Alaska quarter, you should not expect an extraordinary market price merely because of the date and mint mark. The fascinating story begins when we move from ordinary circulation pieces into exceptional grades, special finishes, or genuine mint errors. And this is where your phrase "good condition" becomes important. In everyday language, someone might call a coin good, excellent, or nearly perfect simply because it looks attractive. Professional grading is much stricter. A circulated coin can have scratches, contact marks, flattened details, and surface wear that are difficult to notice without magnification. A mint state coin, on the other hand, has no wear from circulation. The difference becomes particularly important with modern state quarters because millions were produced, but only a smaller number survived with the exceptional surface quality necessary for the highest grades. A coin can therefore be common by mintage and still become condition-sensitive at the top of the grading scale. The documented auction history proves exactly how dramatic the difference can become. PCGS records an auction result of $2,350 for a 2008 D Alaska quarter graded MS69, sold through Heritage Auctions on January 4, 2017. That is the recorded auction high shown by PCGS for the regular 2008 D Alaska issue. This does not mean every 2008 D Alaska quarter is worth $2,350, and it certainly does not mean a circulated example will receive that amount. It means one specific exceptionally high-grade certified specimen achieved that result under auction conditions. That distinction is essential when discussing coin prices honestly. There is also a documented MS68 example that sold for $517 at Heritage Auctions in December 2016. PCGS's auction record identifies that specimen as an MS68 and reports the population information associated with the certification. The difference between $517 and $2,350 shows just how strongly a single grade point can matter when a modern coin reaches the upper end of the grading scale. The ordinary collector might see two nearly identical coins, but professional grading can separate them into different market categories. This is why the condition of your 2008 D Alaska quarter deserves much more attention than simply asking whether the coin looks shiny. PCGS currently lists a price guide figure of around $775 for the MS68 category on its auction record page, while the historical MS69 auction record remains $2,350. These figures should be treated as market references rather than promises. A guide can change, and an auction result represents what one buyer paid for one particular certified specimen at a particular moment. In 2026, the best way to estimate a coin's current market position is to compare its exact grade, certification, designation, eye appeal, and the most recent comparable transactions. Never assume that an old auction record automatically becomes the guaranteed selling price of another coin years later. Now let's talk about the coin that most viewers will actually find, a circulated 2008 D Alaska quarter. If yours has visible wear on Washington's portrait, flattened high points, numerous contact marks, scratches, or dull surfaces, it is probably an ordinary circulation survivor. That does not make it useless to a collector. State quarters remain an important modern U.S. series, and collectors often build complete date-and mint collections. But there is a major difference between being collectible and being an extreme rarity. The documented auction evidence shows that the major prices are associated with exceptional certified grades, not simply with owning any 2008 D Alaska quarter. Now turn the coin over and examine the grizzly bear. This is where the Alaska quarter becomes particularly interesting for era collectors. Look around the bear's claws, salmon, lettering, rim, and the surrounding fields. Examine the North Star and the words "The Great Land." If you notice an unusual raised line, missing detail, strange shape, or apparent doubling, do not immediately declare that you have found a major error. Modern coins experience plenty of post-mint damage, and circulation can create marks that look surprisingly unusual. The first step is always to determine whether the feature could have been created during the striking process. One reported discussion involving a 2008 D Alaska quarter provides a useful warning. Collectors have sometimes questioned unusual doubling or marks on the design, but specialists have identified examples as machine doubling or post-strike damage rather than major collectible errors. That is an important lesson because an unusual-looking coin is not automatically a mint error. If a mark is flat, scraped, pushed, or inconsistent with the way a die would transfer metal, it may have occurred after the coin left the mint. Before assigning a dramatic market price, the physical evidence needs to be consistent with an actual manufacturing event. One of the most interesting areas to inspect is the bear's claws. Collectors have discussed apparent extra claw or unusual claw features on Alaska quarters, but these should not automatically be treated as an officially recognized major variety. A feature that looks like an additional claw can sometimes be caused by a die characteristic, a die crack, metal flow, or damage. In one collector discussion involving an Alaska quarter, what initially appeared to be an unusual claw was debated and ultimately treated cautiously rather than automatically declared a major rarity. This is exactly why authentication matters. A dramatic nickname on social media is not the same thing as professional attribution. Another possibility is a struck-through error. If grease, debris, or another foreign substance interferes with the die during striking, portions of the design can appear weak or missing. That is physically different from a coin that simply became worn in circulation. The distinction can sometimes be difficult to make from a photograph, especially when the coin is already heavily circulated. If letters appear partially missing, inspect the surrounding metal and determine whether the design looks weakly struck or physically worn away. A genuine mint-made struck-through feature can be interesting, but it should be verified before assigning a major price. Off-center strikes are another type of mint error that collectors know well. A normal blank planchet should be centered between the dies. If it shifts during striking, the design can be displaced toward one side of the coin. A genuine off-center strike often leaves a characteristic area of blank planchet along one edge. However, a damaged rim can imitate an off-center appearance, especially when the coin has been hit by another object. Look at the entire rim and the way the design meets the edge. If the evidence is compelling, professional examination is the safest way to establish whether the feature originated at the mint. The edge is also worth checking. A normal 2008D Alaska quarter has a reeded edge and a copper-nickel-clad composition. Because this is not a silver circulation quarter, the exposed edge can show the copper-colored core associated with clad construction. Do not mistake that copper-colored line for evidence that the coin is made entirely of copper. Likewise, do not scratch the coin or perform destructive tests to investigate the composition. If a coin appears significantly different in weight, color, thickness, or edge construction, a professional numismatic service can examine it without relying on guesswork. There is another category that collectors should know about, the 2008D Alaska Satin Finish issue. This is not the same as the regular circulation strike. The Mint produced special collector versions, and PCGS catalogs the satin finish separately. A high-grade satin finish specimen can have a completely different market from a normal circulation coin. PCGS records a $1,410 auction result for an SB69 2008D Alaska Satin Finish quarter at Heritage Auctions in January 2017, while its listed guide figure on that record is lower. This is a powerful reminder that two coins with the same date and D-mint mark can belong to different collecting categories. If you are searching through circulation, the first thing to do is identify the coin correctly. Confirm that the obverse date says 2008. Find the D-mint mark. Turn the coin over and verify the Alaska reverse with the grizzly bear, salmon, North Star, the Great Land, and 1959. Then examine the overall condition. If it has clear circulation wear, do not expect the same market as an MS68 or MS69 certified example. If it appears unusually clean and sharp, then it may deserve closer examination. The highest grade coins are often separated from ordinary examples by tiny surface details that are difficult to judge casually. The word silver also needs to be handled carefully because many online coin videos use it as a headline. The normal 2008D Alaska State quarter is not silver. PCGS lists the regular strike as 75% copper and 25% nickel, with a copper core typical of modern clad quarters. Silver-proof and special collector products are different categories and should not be confused with a normal circulation strike. The coin shown in your image should therefore be discussed as a modern clad state quarter unless professional evidence establishes that it belongs to some unusual category. Now imagine two 2008D Alaska quarters sitting side by side. The first has spent years in circulation. Its bare is worn, Washington's cheek has contact marks, the fields are scratched, and the original luster has disappeared. The second has remained remarkably untouched. Its surfaces are clean, the design is sharp, the luster is strong, and the coin eventually receives a top mint state grade. Both coins began with the same date, the same mint mark, and the same basic design. Yet the second can enter an entirely different collector market. That is the central lesson of modern coin grading. Rarity is not always about how few were originally made. Sometimes it is about how few survived in exceptional condition. And the auction record gives this story real weight. The 2008D Alaska quarter has a documented $3,350 MS-69 auction result, while another MS-68 specimen realized $517. PCGS also currently shows approximately $775 as its guide figure for the MS-68 category. These figures do not establish a fixed 2026 selling price, but they demonstrate that exceptional examples can command amounts far above face value. The difference between those results and ordinary circulation pieces is precisely why collectors examine their state quarters so carefully. The Alaska quarter also has historical significance because it represents one of the final stages of the 50-state quarters program. The United States Mint described Alaska as the 49th state quarter and Hawaii as the 50th and final state design. That means the Alaska issue occupies a special position near the end of one of the most widely collected modern U.S. coin programs. The program brought millions of Americans into coin collecting by turning everyday change into a collection of state symbols and historical stories. The Alaska design stands out because it combines wildlife, landscape, statehood history, and a memorable phrase, the Great Land. The biggest lesson from this coin is that extraordinary auction results usually belong to extraordinary specimens. The 2008D Alaska quarter had a massive production run, yet a certified MS-69 example reached $3,350 in a documented heritage auction sale. That contrast is exactly what makes the coin so interesting. A coin can be common in circulation and still become scarce at the very highest grades. It can also become more interesting if a genuine mint error is confirmed, but the evidence must come first. A coin should never be called rare merely because someone online gives it an exciting nickname. And now look again at the Alaska quarter in your collection. The grizzly bear is holding its salmon. The North Star is shining above. The Great Land identifies Alaska's famous nickname, while 1959 records the year Alaska joined the Union. The D mint mark tells you the coin came from Denver, and 2008 is the actual issue date. It is a small piece of American history that traveled through everyday commerce and may still be sitting unnoticed in a jar or drawer. Most examples are ordinary, but the right grade, the right finish, or a properly authenticated mint error can completely change the collecting story. This is ARY Coins News, and today's Alaska quarter investigation shows why you should never judge a coin only by its face value. The normal 2008D circulation quarter is clad, common by mintage, and generally modest in circulated condition. But the highest certified grades have produced documented auction results reaching into the thousands, including the $2,350 MS-69 record. The key is identification, condition, authentication, and evidence. Never clean a potentially important coin, never assume a strange mark is an error without verification, and never confuse the 1959 statehood date with the 2008 coin date. Keep checking those quarters, keep learning the details, and keep your eyes open, because sometimes the most interesting discovery begins with a coin that looks completely ordinary. Subscribe to ARY Coins News for more coin history investigations, auction records, mint error stories, grading information, and fresh collector alerts.